Welcome everybody today to our live stream with Opportunity International. I'm really happy today to have Dan Murray, the CEO, on with us today. And Dan and I go back a long way. He'll maybe mention some of that, but Opportunity is an organization I've known of since probably 1998 when it was started in Canada. And an organization I really hold dear and trust for the impact that they're having. Welcome, Dan. Glad you're here.
Thank you, Mark. It's a real delight to be here, and that relationship is a two-way street. You know, we have the relationship between your family and yourself, and an opportunity to say goes back a long time. And you know, we've become friends over a number of different opportunities, even before I was at OIC. But we deeply appreciate the partnership with Stronger Philanthropy.
Dan, tell us about you. Who are you, and how did you get into this role? You've been CEO at Opportunity now in Canada for
Just over 5 years. So I became CEO in November of 2018, which was just at the end of OIC's 20th anniversary year celebrations. And so, and now we just completed our 25th anniversary last year as an organization, part of this global work. Myself, well, tell you a little bit about myself. I'm married to my wife, Brenda. I've got 3 adult children and 1 granddaughter who's about 11 months old. So that on the personal side, I live in St. Catharines, Ontario at the moment. A bit about my background. I studied engineering at the University of Waterloo, electrical engineering. After my undergrad, I worked at a hearing aid company as a design engineer. Ended up there as the manager of the R&D department, worked on my master's, and the topic of my master's was digital technology as it applies to the hearing aid sector. And then I went off and joined the Foreign Service. I worked for Department of Foreign Affairs International Trade Canada, now known as Global Affairs Canada, as a trade and investment diplomat, and included a couple of years in Ottawa working on a US trade desk, and then posted to South Korea for 4 years, working out of the embassy in Seoul, and also for about a year and a half managing remotely our consulate in Busan. And it was, fascinating 5-year or about 7-year period of my career. Figured I'd spend the rest of my career there. But before I left the hearing aid company, I started a little incubator looking at the future of digital technology. And I found a couple of really smart people to work there. And so that percolated away while I was in Korea. And they brought it to a point where it was a technology that could be commercialized. And Unitron, which is the name of the hearing aid company I worked for, did business in Korea. So once a year, the president would come through. And since I was the tech sector guy, I would meet him like I would meet any other Canadian company coming through. And they offered me a job to come back and be the founding president of this startup tech company that was going to develop first generation chipset technology for the hearing aid industry. I wasn't so sure I wanted to leave my career in foreign affairs, but I had acquired 3 kids, and Paul Martin was finance minister, and he had sort of frozen civil service salaries after I joined. And I think I took about a 40% pay cut to become a diplomat in the first place. So I went back to Ottawa after my posting, and I asked for a leave of absence, to start a tech company. I said it would make me probably a better trade officer, but they couldn't get their head around that concept. So I had to resign. And so I embarked on a 5-year journey of launching a tech company. And that's, I think, where our families sort of intersected a bit, because I know hopefully I can share this, but your dad was a shareholder in the hearing aid company, and by virtue of that became a shareholder in the startup tech company and was on the board. So I actually had to make my presentations to that board when your dad was on there. He certainly held us accountable, and it was a really great learning journey. After about 5 years, we successfully brought that product to market, and then I ventured forth and did a few years of just trying my hand at some other consulting, worked with a couple of the clients that we'd worked with at that company. But I was deeply involved at my church at the time as well, in a number of volunteer roles, and a church called Creekside Church in Waterloo. And they got to a point where their sort of growth was plateaued, and they decided they needed to hire what they called an executive pastor. And I just felt really strongly called to the role, even though I had no sort of formal theological background. But it was, I ended up getting it to my surprise, but it was largely an organizational restructuring role to help prepare the ground for the sort of like the next level of impact growth. And so I was there for about 5 years. It was quite an interesting journey. I think everything I learned about leadership, I probably learned, in the private sector, and then was able to bring it into the not-for-profit sector. One of the biggest themes that would sort of represent leadership for me, and I expressed that, at the church, was really finding really great leaders, making sure that they were empowered and had the resources they needed to lead, and then kind of get out of their way and give them the credit for their wins. The church did really take off after a bit of restructuring. Again, all because of the amazing team. I was very much behind the scenes kind of person. During that time, though, I'd actually seen the CEO role at Opportunity International posted in 2008, I think it was, and I applied. I think I got an interview. I'm not sure if you were board chair then, but I got one interview, but they were looking for someone with a lot of sort of fundraising experience in the not-for-profit world, and I had maybe 1 year at in front of a church audience, and but the job just sort of really, like the role, just seemed to match my background, from entrepreneurial, international experience, real hard for the poor. And anyway, I moved on, finished my assignment at the church, and then I became chief operating officer, and about a year and a half later, the chief executive officer of Teen Challenge Canada, which is a faith-based addiction recovery organization. And it was kind of the same story. We needed to restructure so that we could grow. The challenge of addiction across the country was pretty substantial, and we felt we were just like a drop in the bucket, and we were hoping to add more capacity. And so I ended up being with the organization for about 7.5 years, and did working again with an amazing team. We were able, by the end of it, to expand bed capacity across the country by about 50%, and also professionalize the counseling, and brought in a lot of best practices. An HR department, for example, with an organization with over 100 employees. But it was time for a change, and one day I just Googled what was out there, and up pops OIC CEO again. This was in April of 2018, and I thought, I've applied to this job before, and I found my original cover letter, and it was like 10 years to the month. So I threw my hat in the ring, and long story short, November 2018, I became the CEO of this amazing organization.
What was it that drew you there? Why did you even consider it twice? There must be something about opportunity itself and its mission that is really calling you.
Yeah, the sort of the DNA of opportunity is this passion to come alongside some of the most marginalized populations on the planet, people sort of trapped in the grip of systemic poverty, where they don't have hope, and and they don't have the opportunity to break out of that. They're smart in a sense, they're street smart, they're hardworking, they've got entrepreneurial drive, but they lack education. They lack access to basic financial services that could make it even possible to get some kind of a enterprise off the ground. And so they're living, anywhere from less than $1 a day to perhaps up to $10, but they're below the formal, financial sector. And so opportunity provides this like sustainable, hand up rather than hand out approach, to poverty alleviation. There's a famous quote, I think, from Bono, who became quite a fan of opportunity. And he said, you've heard it said, give a man a fish, he eats for a day, teach a man to fish, he'll eat for a lifetime. And he said, but it's better to say, give a woman a small loan and some training, and she'll feed her family and her community, for a lifetime, kind of thing. And so it's that whole kind of dignified, transformative model of just coming alongside, through our partners, and creating the space and the opportunity for people to then find their own path out of poverty with dignity, through a sustainable livelihood.
I want to go back to the model of opportunity, because this is one of the things that I see as opportunity's unique value propositions. It makes you different from most charities in that donors to opportunity actually have an opportunity to invest their funds that rotate over and over again through the
Mhm.
system to keep helping these marginalized entrepreneurs.
Yeah, that's correct. And, I guess to sort of describe this rather holistically, we, as an organization, we started back in the 70s, so we're well over, 50 years old. And at the time, there was, trying to serve populations that needed access to a loan, a small loan. There was very little facility available. So we started a number of NGOs, which became microfinance institutions. That's a fancy word for banker to the poor. Muhammad Yunus wrote a book called Banker to the Poor. And if you want a crash course in microfinance, I suggest to read that book. I did in the summer as I was applying to this job. But the model is, making making sort of low, small size, microloans available to people who need that to kickstart or to grow their business, but to couple that with training and other market supports, because it isn't enough just to be a bank and give loans. Because the problem there is, you're probably just going to increase indebtedness and leave the client worse off than you found them. So it's really coming alongside, mentoring, providing practical advice on how to run a business effectively. Simple things like how to keep books and records, and how to be on alert for fraud and people stealing stuff from you and things like that. And and then as well as market supports, like in our emerging ag sector, there's a whole ecosystem around the micro farmers that provide, storage facilities or volume discounts on seed or fertilizer or other inputs, better market pricing, even advice on climate conditions and what to sow and what not to sow. So there's these, other supports that help contribute to the success of the client. But as you say, we fund capacity building with our partners, but we also fund the capital that goes into those loan funds, and so that capital is an asset that just resides in the field, and I call it it's sort of this virtuous cycle of poverty alleviation, because the money's loaned out, the clients use it to grow their business, they pay it back, and then it's loaned out again, and it actually grows. And our partners become sustainable, and they can fund, the loan officers and the relationship officers, the mentors that are coming alongside the clients out of the revenue, from this this loan cycle. The clients are delighted with it, and as a result, they can actually grow their business, provide a better future for their family.
Can you give us a sense of the scale and scope of opportunity?
Well, yeah. So, I mean, Opportunity Canada is just one small part of a global movement, and our our own sort of impact is somewhere, like in 2022, I think there was about almost 20 million lives impacted just through Opportunity Canada, or through Opportunity globally. Globally, we work in about 33 countries. About 97% of our clients are women. The loan portfolio out there right now is a couple of $1 billion total through all of the partners, and it's involved in almost everything you can think of when it comes to starting a micro enterprise and providing a better future for your family. From farmers to schools to dressmakers and tailors and hairdressers and restaurants and little stores and taxi drivers, and on and on and on it goes.
Tell us a couple stories of clients that you've met.
Oh gosh, it's so hard to pick your favorite because every one of them is amazing, but there are a few that really do stand out. We're doing some work in Haiti in partnership with Opportunity International Germany, and I was there. I had the privilege of being there in 2019. It's a little unsafe to go there at the moment, sadly, but we're still working with large groups of women right at the bottom of the economic pyramid. But I was there, and I managed to meet probably about 15 or 16 clients over a couple of days. And I met this one woman named Elda, and her story is that her her husband, her partner, kind of kicked her out of the house one day and said that she was useless, and she had a couple of toddlers, and she ended up camping next to her parents' shack, and that's when she was invited into the program somewhere around that period of time. And this is a kind of an 18-month graduation model program that we're involved in, where we provide mentoring and training and some introductory assets to get something off the ground. And it targets the most marginalized women in one of the most marginalized countries, in the hemisphere, and so they work hard to identify women who are quite vulnerable. Target women exclusively because, at least in that country, if you want to get to the kids and the families, you're going to go through the women. And anyway, she signed up for the program. She went through it. It's about an 18-month journey. Well, when I met her, she had already been out. She was one of the earlier graduates. She'd been out for about 2 or 3 years. And so we had to walk quite a way. It was just like the Jeep ride over rivers. And I think we ended up finally having to stop and then climb the last kilometer in. And we got to her where she had a little house that she'd built. And she wasn't there, so word was sent out, and they found her. She came in from the cornfield, and she was all dusty, but she was like, she did not want to meet with us covered in dust. So she went into her shack, and about 10 minutes later came out in a pink dress, all washed up, and sat and talked to us and told us her story. And she has like 3 or 4 different sources of revenue. She makes this famous local drink that's made out of a local bark. She sources the bark from someone somewhere in the country, and she makes a big batch of it every week and sells it out completely once a week at this local market. She buys and sells stuff in the market. She's now got pigs, she's got a cow, she's got goats, she's got chickens. She managed to save enough money to buy her own lot of land. She took us there and showed us the avocado trees, and she's planning to build a much nicer house on that property. And it's just like, and at one point I was there also with my counterpart in the US, Atul Tandon, the CEO of Opportunity USA. The three we were there with the CEO of Opportunity Germany, Anke, and Atul said to her, "Your story is so inspiring. I don't think we would have survived a week in your shoes." And it's really funny. She just stopped, and then she said, "Well, that's not true. All you need is a plan, and then stick to it, and you'll be fine." So you're like being schooled, by this amazing woman. And so just that story always comes to mind for me. But just even more recently, I was in Cartagena, and there's a program there that's also working with the we call it Ultra Poverty Graduation Program. And I was privileged, Cartagena well. I think you may be coming from Cartagena as we speak, but you get 20 minutes outside of town, and it's a very different situation. And the poverty was quite visible. And there's these canals that are quite, chocked with pollution, and shacks on either side. And I was invited into the house of a number of clients and sat in this one woman's house. She was a Venezuelan refugee. She'd been scraping by, I think she was a fish cleaner is how she was making some money, but she's lucky to make a couple of bucks a day. And we're sitting in her house, and she told us, I don't trust anybody. I've had a lot of trauma in my life, and she's crying a bit. She said, when we were invited in this program, I didn't believe for a second that anyone was serious. Lots of people come through. There's a photos taken, and then nothing ever happens. But she said, but you guys have been consistent, and over time I've learned to trust you. I've become part of a group. I'm part of a savings group. I'm now part of a community. We look after each other, and I've learned so much about how to run my business. I'm going to start my own little business. And she was going to get a fridge, and she was going to start supplying some food in the community. And she looked at me, and when they told her that I was from Canada, she started crying, and she said, I never in my wildest imaginations would imagine that a Canadian would be sitting here in my house. And it's this very humble little shack, but I was like equally moved. And I said, never in my wild imaginations did I think I'd have the privilege to be sitting here with you in your house. And it was just such a kind of a beautiful moment. Because at the end of the day, it really is just about relationships between people, right? And helping, just kind of coming alongside each of us on this journey in life. And so, yeah, but there's stories. I mean, I could pick a country, and I'll tell you five probably off the top of my head, but what strikes me about it is just the tenacity, the resilience, the work ethic, the drive, the desire to provide a better future for their family, have their kids in school, the hope, the transformation that takes place from, if you're trapped, I call it this sort of grinding, dehumanizing cycle of poverty where, we don't get it here, but, you just don't know where that next meal's coming from and you don't know how to break out of it. And it's been perhaps generational. And so it feels like you're just stuck. You may not even know what hope even looks like. But to introduce hope and to begin that journey, which is their own journey, it's not us doing it for them. It's just sort of creating the conditions where they can do it themselves. It's a beautiful and dignified thing.
That's beautiful. Let's move our focus to Opportunity Canada right now, and maybe I think it's important to understand, how the charity in Canada operates. What's your governance structure? What does your staff look like? How many people are there?
Yeah.
Just help us understand.
Sure. So Opportunity Canada incorporated in 1998, as you mentioned. Our founder was David Stiller, actually, but there have been a lot of other voices at the table helping us get off the ground, like Howard McLean in Calgary was, equally influential. The Opportunity Global dates back to around 1971, 72. A guy named Al Whitaker in the States actually met a Canadian and who was serving in Colombia and had come up with the idea of how about a loan instead of a grant. And Al is, I think, a Wall Street banker and was sat in a church in upstate New York when that Ross Clemenger, the name of the Canadian missionary, was on furlough and told this story. And I think it just the lights went on for Ross or for Al, and he realized, I could bring my banking skill set to serve the poor. So he started a little NGO that began experimenting with that. Meanwhile, across the pond in Australia, another gentleman named David Bousseau was doing the same thing. And somewhere along the way, the two organizations met, and I think it was in 76 that they decided to merge and they formed what was then called Opportunity International. So I think that's how far back it goes. There were Canadians involved from the very outset and have served on the global board, and it's taken on a number of different formulations over the years. Over that time, there's been 5 countries really that have come together. I think there were actually 7 or 8, but they didn't all survive. But Canada, the US, UK, Germany, and Australia together form Opportunity International now. So each of those is incorporated in their own country with a board of directors. So Canada, we've got our own board of directors. We're obviously governed by CRA guidelines, a number of the 4 Cs, and Charity Intelligence does an assessment on us every year. We're a fully audited organization and fully accountable to the authorities. I have our structure. Our board is a governance board, with a chair and a vice chair and a secretary and a treasurer, a number of committees, fundraising committee, a finance risk and audit committee, and a governance and membership committee. So that board meets quarterly. We make a full financial report and a CEO report at each of those meetings, and then there's a number of other standing items. All the finance work goes through the Finance Risk and Audit Committee prior to the board meeting. We've also structured such that we have a separate arm's length organization, which is a foundation. And the reason for that is when we put loan funds into the field, they have to basically sit there as an asset that we demonstrate perpetual control over, in order to satisfy Canada Revenue Agency that those assets won't be used for purposes other than our mission. And with a one-time grant, it's spent and you can monitor it, report on it, and it's done. But with loan funds, with the capital for loan funds, that asset is perpetual. So the foundation is a smaller group of 5 board members who basically are overseeing those assets under management, if you like. Within the foundation, we also house a kind of a resource fund, we're calling it. It's something that we're hoping to grow over time through planned gifts and other mechanisms. as a to help underwrite, some of the operating costs of the charity. And then we are venturing forth bravely and boldly into the world of social investment, and again within the foundation, hoping to launch a social investment fund. But getting back to our structure, so the board is when it's fully populated, it's about 12. I think right now we have 9. There've been a couple of people have turned out, and there's a number of people right now being reviewed and considered for board membership by the committee. In terms of the organization itself, we're a fairly lean organization, fully loaded. We're about 15. I'd say about half of those are part-time, a few contract positions. We're structured into 4 main departments. So we have reporting to me, I've got Daniel Genet, who's our amazing VP of Philanthropy, and he has a team of directors, regional directors, who are mainly engaged in working with what we call them major donors, which is more relational in its work. And but he also has on his team someone who's focused on what we would call the mid donor part of the pyramid, and it's just a different kind of interaction. And so that's what he has in terms of personnel. He's responsible for all fundraising, including what you would call mass, the mass donor. But that work is done in collaboration with our marketing department, because it's mostly, communications. So we have philanthropy, we have marketing. So Anita Hintz is the director of marketing. She also reports directly to me. She's a godsend. She's just a really gifted marketing person. And we have a very part-time contract person who's actually someone we met when we were in Honduras earlier this month. He was our translator. Turns out he's a very gifted marketing communication specialist, and so he's joined us. It's kind of nice to have a team member residing in one of the countries where we serve, but he's fluent in English and Spanish, and very capable in helping some of the digital media stuff that Anita needs done behind the scenes. So we have a very lean program team. That's the team that is responsible for the frontline relationship with our partners in the field. Their job really is to, understand our partners' strategies and requirements, and how we can come alongside where we can, help fill the gap. And then they take all of that in collaboration and map out a 3-year program strategy for each of our countries that we're working in. And then that boils down into particular projects that require funding. And then the program team will then produce proposals, which our philanthropy team will take out, to the donor base to see what resonates with who. So the program, and then to close the loop, the program department is monitoring the work in the field, doing the monitoring and evaluation, reporting back so that we can report to the donors, what we've done with their funds. And then the last very important team is our finance admin team, which takes care of all the behind the scenes stuff, HR, IT, our database, obviously payroll and finance accounting.
That sounds great. Okay, thanks for that overview. Help me understand, like, if you're looking at your annual revenue, maybe talk about your revenue trends in the last maybe 5 years. I know through COVID, things were crazy, so maybe that impacted you.
Yeah, it's been interesting. We are if you look even over the last 15 years, our revenue has been more or less 50% from government funding when it's available, and then 50% through what I would call non-government sources, so individuals, companies, foundations, and so you have to take that piece into account. So last year, but government programs will run out. We had a 5-year journey with Global Affairs Canada in Ghana, and but it wrapped up in 2022. So 2023 would have been the first year without significant government funding. So if you look at our financial statement that comes out for 2023, it's going to look like a fairly significant drop, but it's just because we're in a gap year. We got about 4 proposals in with GAC, and we're expecting at least one of them to be picked up. But we're in a gap year. So the other half is the non-government funding, and that's that's the stuff that's really visible. That's, that's all the relationships with donors. That's us telling our story. And so, and to some extent, it's the part that we have more control over. You can't control government grants. You can't control, somebody writing a check either, but at least you can engage in the journey, to raise funds. So we've been very intentional about becoming, really broadening our donor base, our non-government donor base. It's really been a goal of mine since I joined, to figure out how to do that. And so blessed with the team we have now. I think, a lot of the pieces are in place. We are seeing, we were just looking at a 4-year trend yesterday, and it's interesting. Since 2020, we've actually seen steady increases, in the right direction. It's been looking quite promising. 2020 was the crazy pandemic year, and yet up to that point, that ended up being our highest fundraising year ever. So I remember we entered the year with a brand new strategic plan and a bright, shiny, program portfolio of projects that we were hoping to fund. And then March came, and we had to sort of throw all that out the window. And we, my CFO and I at the time were having these private meetings, like, what happens if our revenue falls by 25%? What if it falls by 50%? What was our contingency plan? How are we going to deal with this? And in the end, our revenue was higher than it had ever been. So the people who stand with us in this journey financially, we were blown away by generosity and support, and so we've been seeing that increase. And in 2023 was our highest fundraising year ever. So, shout out to Daniel and his team. They really doing great work. I think we still have a long way to go. That number of private fundraising in 2023 was about 4.2 million. There was another million in sort of what we would call technical revenue that wasn't part of some asks. So about 5.2 total revenue last year. And our team really believes that in a country as wealthy and generous as Canada, and with a mission as compelling as the mission we have, that we know that we can get the word out more and raise more funds. And it isn't about raising money for the sake of raising money. Obviously, it's always, for us, comes back to those client stories, because it does take resources to make this work happen. And we're just trying to touch a magnitude of an order of magnitude more clients 5 years from now than we are today.
Thanks, Dan, for that overview. We're getting near the end, but I'm wondering if you can give us maybe 3 projects that you're currently raising funds for, and why that would appeal to our constituency here.
Sure. The first project I'd like to bring to your attention is the work we're doing in Nicaragua. Nicaragua is where I think one of our first loans actually went. And it's in a crazy story. The founder, Juan Ulloa, or not the founder, but the longtime ED, passed away sadly from COVID in 2020. They were in a really rough place as an organization. They were burning cash, and they were ready to go under. Diana Montoya, who had started as a loan officer, had been there 20 years, was appointed as the ED, and she just did all the tough decision making that needed to be done during a couple of very hard years, and got their books balanced. And then there was a couple of years where we couldn't send funds down. There was restructuring going on in the local economy, but sort of around February of last year, they did restructure, and we've been able to now send funds. They are classic microfinance. After Haiti, probably the poorest country in the hemisphere. They have, if you remember, those who know OI know about trust groups, where there'd be a collection of 10 or 12 women who would guarantee each other's loans. So that's the primary model that they're still using. I was privileged to be there in May and met about 20 clients over 3 days, and the stories are just compelling. And right now, they're in a position where, having recovered from a lot of the challenges they went through, they can begin to expand out again across the country. They've kept most of their buildings, even though they had to shutter most of the branches. So they're slowly trying to reopen some of those branches. So we're trying to raise really as much as we can to help them with their loan portfolio, with some client training, and also with a sort of upgrade to their digital core so they can become a little more efficient in how they work. But that's just absolutely beautiful work. Not too far away in the same region, actually where you are right now, there's a project in Colombia. We call it a graduation program. It's very similar to the graduation program in Haiti, and we're partnering with Opportunity International US on that. And we're trying to support cohorts of women who will go through an 18-month journey. And in that, it's a very holistic journey where they get access to training, become part of a savings group. Eventually, there's an asset, depending on what kind of small business they want to start. A lot of coaching and mentoring, but also connection into services that are available to them. Often they don't realize what municipal services and healthcare services and others are available. So there's a lot of plugging in, to society, and but the goal obviously is that they be sustainable when they come out and able to, the goal in all of this is each family now has income insecurity, and they get to a place where their income is more secure, and they can therefore provide a better future for their family, for their kids, put their kids in school, get 3 meals a day, that sort of thing. The third project is brand new, actually, and it's a new country for us. And this we're going to be doing in partnership with Opportunity International Germany, our colleagues there, and it's in Malawi, and it's a climate resilience smallhold farmer initiative. And again, this is one of the poorest countries in Africa, and the area's been, just suffered from a lot of climate disasters. And so we're working with about 6,000 women farmers. They have small lots, less than an acre, and it's subsistence. Normally, whatever they can produce, it's not enough to provide for the family, and they've got to find in the off-season dangerous jobs elsewhere. But with an intervention of that sort of whole ag finance journey that I was talking about before, along with there's been some real great climate resilience work done where agronomy practices that are suitable for the environment at the moment and the kind of conditions they're facing, where they can dramatically increase their yields and the resilience of the crop. And so it's in working with a number of different partners, we're looking at it as building resilience in the face of climate events, but also just increasing their livelihoods so they can actually move forward. So that's those are kind of 3 sample projects. We're doing work in Ghana and Honduras and the DR. And Haiti as well, but I'll bring before you Malawi, Colombia, and Nicaragua this morning.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you, Dan. This has been really enlightening. We've had a number of people join the live stream. There's probably a dozen people watching, and after we'll be making this video available to anybody in our community. I'm wondering if you have any final thoughts that you'd like to share in our time together. And by the way, if anybody in the chat right now would like to ask Dan a question, please just type it in, and I'll give Dan a moment to respond to those too.
Yeah, I'd be very happy to address any questions. And I just want to say thanks for the opportunity to tell our story a little bit this morning. And Mark, again, we're so grateful for the long time partnership with Stronger Philanthropy. It's been a deep and powerful partnership, and you guys have had legacy level impact in the work we're doing. And the work that we do, it's not just us, it's a whole journey. If you look at our logo, it's kind of a circle and it's got 3 different colors, and it was intentional. It's it's made up of one color is our supporters, the people that are actually funding this, and then it's our staff and our volunteers, and then it's our local partners, because we're always working with local partners. It's not putting Canadians on the ground. And then in the middle of it is a little dot, and that's our client. And so, we're all focused on serving the client, but it really is a journey and a partnership together. And those that have become supporters of OI, and I know you can speak to this personally, often have the opportunity to come to the field with us and see the impact of their funding. and see firsthand. And then it really becomes, I mean, our donors are compassionate ambassadors and advocates for the work that we do. And they're as much a part of what we do as any staff member is. And so very grateful for the support of you and the colleagues you worked with. And I would just say that, the challenges that we're facing here in Canada are immense, but they really are small compared to the poverty challenges in some of the most marginalized countries around the world. And with the wealth that we've been entrusted with here, I think the onus is on us to find a way to come alongside and make the world a better place for those that have it a lot worse off than us. And so we're part of that. Not the only solution, obviously, but this is a sustainable, transformative, and dignified pathway out of poverty.